Hello, my name is Putkonen. Thank you for joining me. Today I'm talking about the fundamental misunderstanding in gradual enlightenment. A lot of people believe that enlightenment and awakening is gradual, and I'm going to try to illustrate this as clearly as possible where the misunderstanding lies, because enlightenment itself is sudden, complete, and irreversible. There's no going back. And in a way, you can think about it in terms of analogy. It's like you're walking along a cliff, and the valley, the ground is far below, and you're walking along this cliff. Now, you could jump immediately, but if you walk the next 10 miles along this cliff, or you decide to spend the next 5 years hiking along this cliff, that at no point gets you to the valley. This is a infinitely long cliff. It's kind of like you can think of it like I forget the kind of curve they call it, but it's kind of curve that approaches zero and then levels out. Each decrease is less than the last, to the point where it approaches zero but never crosses zero. It just is always above zero. And so this cliff might have started quite high and could get quite closer to the ground, but it never reaches the ground. And so you're always walking along this cliff. At no point do you get to the valley. You have to jump. And when you jump, it's sudden, it's complete, and there's no going back. You're on the valley. You jump, you're on the valley. The end. Now, no matter how long or how far you've hiked along this cliff, no matter how low the cliff gets to the valley and how close it looks, look how much progress I made. I'm so much closer to the valley than I used to be. That's not actual progress. You haven't gradually gotten to the valley. You're still walking on the cliff. You're still on the edge of the cliff the entire time. You've never made the dive. That dive that gets you immediately in the valley. Instead, you're looking at the relative height. Well, I'm closer to being to the valley floor than I used to be, so I've made progress. No, you haven't. You're still on the cliff. And the cliff, when it comes to enlightenment, is the notion of a me. Wayne Liquorman, other teachers, they sometimes will shrink enlightenment, the definition of it, to simply seeing through the me. I've said in other videos, either the me is believed or it isn't. And so there is this walking along the cliff edge of, well, yeah, you can look at what you think and feel yourself to be. You can realize that, say you're not the body. I realize I'm not my fingernails. I realize I'm not this. I realize I'm not that. You can detach from possessions, and there's no me and mine in there. And yeah, there are things you can do to diminish and shake up the me. But no matter how much or how little of a me there is, the fundamental belief in a me remains. And that fundamental belief in the me is the cliff face. Either you believe in the me and you're on the cliff, or you don't believe in a me anymore and you're in the valley. And at no point does the cliff edge reach the valley. Yet the jump, that sudden has to happen, or it never happens, in which case you're just always walking along the cliff face. Sometimes you're higher from the valley floor, sometimes you're lower. Sometimes you feel like you made progress, sometimes you think you lost progress. But it doesn't matter. You're still sitting and walking on this cliff face. And this is where the misunderstanding of gradual or progress comes in, because people go, well, no, I've made progress, or I'm gradually getting enlightened. You are maybe diminishing the sense of me, but you still believe in the me. You're still walking along that cliff edge, looking for a way to reach the floor of the valley without jumping. And at no point does that cliff face ever reach the valley. It never gets down there. There's always that, you're on the cliff top, you're in the valley. There's always that difference. And so if you've been, like I said, if you've been walking 10 miles along the cliff edge and you're like, oh wow, I'm 100 feet closer to the valley floor than I was, look, I've made progress to get there. I'm so much closer to there than I was before. That's the illusion of progress. You're still on the cliff top. You've made no progress. Very likely the cliff top could change direction, and suddenly you start getting frustrated. It's like, well, I lost what I had. What happened? I seem to be regressing. I'm not making progress anymore. Well, no, it's just the terrain of the cliff you're on went the other direction for a bit. At no point does it reach the valley. It levels out above zero, substantially above zero. It's that, on that type of curve that levels out to zero, you can make progress along the curve. You can get exceedingly close to zero, but there's always that gap. And crossing that gap, that cliff, is sudden, complete, and irrevocable. And so I'm just trying to illustrate in a couple different ways why people could think they're making progress, and you could say time has spent. I mean, I don't know how many people have gone, well, this person spent 20 years meditating and then woke up. It took them 20 years to get there. No, it took them 20 years of walking along the cliff face until they finally jumped. But this other person might have only walked along the cliff face one day and jumped. And so this person that jumped in one day, that enlightenment happened just as immediately as the person that took 20 years to jump off the cliff. Because all that time, all that progress is just walking along the cliff face. It's not getting you it's not getting you to the valley floor. So maybe this analogy might help. I kind of like the analogy. It's a bit of a pictorial thing, because you can almost imagine someone walking along, say, the cliffs of Dover, where it's like hundreds of feet up, and you're just walking along there. But these cliffs go on for infinity. You can spend a lifetime, and you're up here on the cliff face. The only way to get down is to jump or fall off. There has to be a getting off the cliff face and landing on the valley. There's no other way to get there. And that piece, sudden, complete, and no going back. So, if you get any questions, comments, please post below. Until next time, thank you much.